Hey guys, Brad Scott with bradscottvisuals.com and islandbeachart.com, and today I have an awesome requested tutorial for you guys, and basically I'm going to be giving you all of my night photography tips. So let's get started. Now here's some of the things you'll need. You're going to need a steady tripod, obviously a DSLR camera. Right now I'm using the Canon 60D, and I'll be upgrading to the full frame Canon 6D here in a couple months. You're going to need preferably a wide angle lens with an aperture that goes down to hopefully at least 2.8 or so, and then you're going to want to have an intervalometer, and don't forget an interesting location. Now, there are quite a lot of things that go into getting night photos, and there's a lot of different ways you can manipulate the light. A lot of people think that it's kind of just all set exposures and shutter speeds and ISO settings, aperture for different things that you're shooting, which I guess you could kind of base it roughly on some sort of chart like this, but when you get out into the field, pretty much light is always different. It can be different in the same spot from day to day. Light is always changing, so you need to know how to work around that. So let's get started on teaching you guys a little bit about the elements that go into basically just exposing your photo right and getting the look that you want. Okay, so there's 4 different things along with some other less important things that's going to go into exposing your photo correctly. Now, you've got your ISO, which is basically what controls your overall light. It has the biggest effect over what your shutter speed is going to be. Think of ISO as your main light, your main brightness of the photo, okay? Think of it as the main light source that you can adjust at just the click of a button on your camera. Aperture, or your f-stop, is going to be what controls your depth of field. All lenses are different, so some lenses will go down to 1.2. Most of the L series Canon lenses go down to at least 2.8, and they range of maybe 2.8 to 32 in your f-stop number. Now, the lower the f-stop number, the more light and the more wide open the lens is. So think of it as your eyeball. You've got your pupil. When it's dark outside, you're going to have a bigger wide open pupil to let more of the light in so you can see properly. Now, if you go with a higher f number, basically that means that your lens is closed like your pupil looking directly into the sun. It's a small dot that you're looking through. It requires more time to expose the photo, and this is actually going to give you more focus on the entire photo. Okay, so a low f-stop number is where you get that shallow depth of field. High f-stop number is where you get the entire photo in focus. Now, shutter speed controls the exposure time of your photo. The faster the shutter speed, the more frozen in time look you get. So a fast shutter speed is great for anything that's moving if you want to really freeze it in place. So if you're trying to get a photo of a bird flying, you want a fast shutter speed. If you're trying to get a photo of a surfer catching a barrel of a wave, you're going to want a fast shutter speed. And then slow shutter speeds, which basically is a slow or longer shutter speed, is going to equal more blurring and more ghosting. Now this can play into affect when you're going into trying to get water to be smooth, get that real surreal look to your photo. And we'll go more into that in a little bit here. And then last but not least is the lens. Basically with night photos, it's better to have a lens with an f-stop that's going to be as wide open as possible. So you want to try and go with a lens that's at least f2.8. There's a nice lens that goes for a good price, which is the Tokina 11-16, and that's a f2.8. It just lets you do shorter exposure times for the stars to get more crisp of a photo, and you'll be able to kind of bump your ISO down quite a bit and have a less noisy photo. And now the wider the lens is, the longer the exposure of the stars can be without motion blur. If you think of it as, say you're looking at a star with a big telescope and you try and take a photo, the whole sky is moving, and so the more zoomed in on the star you're going to be, the more motion blur you're going to have in less time. And the more wide angle it is, the less it seems to move within the photo. So, wider the lens, the longer the exposure of stars can be without motion blur. Now, let's look at some scenarios here. And we're going to start off with the moon. Now, the moon is going to be pretty much different every time you're changing the lens. I like to shoot the moon nice and close up so you can see the craters and everything. This photo was shot with a 500mm Rokinon lens. It's a manual focusing lens. I focused it at f8. My ISO for this photo was actually higher than I would normally shoot the moon at, just because it was really windy out, and the Rokinon lens doesn't have image stabilization. It has to be a nice fast shutter speed to get a nice crisp photo. So I bumped my ISO up to 1600. My shutter speed was 1/500th of a second, and I focused on the tree branches as opposed to focusing right in on the moon. Now, I wrote some notes here. It was windy outside, that's why I increased the ISO and increased the shutter speed. And this tree was about 200 yards away from me. So that's why I'm able to get quite a lot of detail in the moon and in the tree as well. Now moving on, let's check out another photo. And if you want to get that still star photo look with the Milky Way, this is a great spot in South Lake Tahoe. It's actually in North Lake Tahoe, called Bonsai Rock. And I shot this photo in the winter time. I was using the Canon 18-135 lens. My focal length here was at 18 millimeters. I had my aperture set at f3.5. ISO was at 1600, and it was a 25-second exposure that I did on this one. Notes to myself that I made is I could have gone with a higher ISO and a little bit of a less exposure, maybe 20 seconds or so, just to get a little less blur in the stars, because there's a slight star trail going on with this photo. If I wanted the stars to be absolutely crisp, I could have gone with about a 20-second exposure on that one. But still, I'm really happy with this photo. It turned out beautiful. Also, I set my white balance on this one for tungsten, for that nice purple and blue effect to come out. And let's move on to the next photo. Next one is going to be star trails. Now this was shot up at the summit of Haleakala in Maui, and there's a really cool observatory on the right here, and there's a road right in the left hand bottom corner, so there's some cars driving around there, and I wanted to get both the the star trails going in a circular manner, and I wanted to get the cars driving on that road, creating some light streaks that way. Now it was pretty cloudy out. It was kind of hard to get really crisp, dark night with bright star trails from the stars. But overall, I think this is a pretty cool image. You still get the effect of the star trails. My focal length was at 18 millimeters with this one, f3.5. My ISO was down at 400, and this was a 20-minute exposure. So I had to sit out in the cold for quite a long time for this one. But I'm very happy by the way it turned out. With the low ISO, it's very clean, not noisy at all, like you get sometimes in the photos where you're going over 3200 or so. And it kind of depends on what camera you have. The newer Canon cameras like the 5D Mark III and the Canon 6D are really good with noise reduction. So if you're looking to get less noise, then you're going to want to go with one of those newer full frame cameras. The scenario is going to be a night panorama with fisheye lens. Now I absolutely love this photo. I won a few contests with this one. I actually won 2 free airline tickets to anywhere Alaska Airlines fly for the Win Your Beach contest with this photo. So this is one of my favorite photos. I think it has just a really cool otherworldly effect to it, with the nice snow on the pier and the mountains, and you got the Milky Way in there, and these trippy kind of purple storm clouds. So basically with this one, I shot this photo with an 8mm fisheye lens and then cropped it down in post-production. I had a very high ISO with this one. It was at 6400, f3.5, focusing to infinity, so you're focusing on the stars. The best way to do this is just pick out a light in the distance if you can, and just try and focus on that. Pretty much pick the light that's furthest away from you, and that should work. My shutter speed on this one was 25 seconds, and as you can tell, since it's a wider angle lens, 8mm as opposed to 18, the stars don't have any blur in them. They're very crisp, no motion blur in the stars. So like I was saying before, the wider angle the lens is, kind of the longer amount of exposure you can do while still maintaining that still crisp star. Notes to myself on this one is I cropped the photo in Photoshop and post-production, and also increased the image size because I didn't want to crop the photo and lose pixels. So I increased the image size with perfect resize by on 1. That way when I go to print it, I can print this photo up to about 8 feet wide. So this is a huge photo, very high megapixel after using the perfect resize by on 1. Now last one I'm going to show is how to take a night panorama using multiple images stitched together. Now as you can see in this photo, I took 3 different exposures. My focal length was 18mm. I took 3 landscape photos stitched together using Photoshop CS6. So this red box around the left hand side, that was my first photo. And then you want to make sure that you're overlapping your photos so that when you go to stitch them together, you can find more detail that is the same within each frame, okay? So you want to overlap it by at least 1/3. So I took one on the left hand side with Emerald Bay, Fanette Island on the right hand side of the image. Then I took one with the island on the middle of the image, and then I took one with Fanette Island in the left hand side of the image, and then stitched those together. If you want to learn how to do that, there's another video I'll post a link in the description below on how to basically stitch images together. Okay. My shutter speed for this one was 1 minute. It was one of the kind of when I was beginning night photography. I would have gone with a lower f-stop number, so I would try and go for at least f3.5. I would have lowered my ISO a little bit, and then also lower my shutter speed. That way I wouldn't get so much blur in the photos. But overall, this is one of my favorite photos. Emerald Bay is a beautiful spot, and it just reminds me of Lake Tahoe. I live in Maui now, which is just as beautiful, but Emerald Bay has a special place in my heart. I love Tahoe. It's a beautiful place. So basically, that's the gist of night photography, guys. I hope you really enjoyed this tutorial. Please remember to thumbs up on this video if you thought it was helpful for you. Just go out and try it yourself. Night photography is amazing. It really makes you realize that we are on this earth, this planet. When you take photos at night, you don't feel like you're part of the world anymore. You feel like you're on a planet in the middle of a galaxy, as opposed to in the daytime you just feel like you're just living life on Earth. It's kind of a very eerie and special adventure when you're doing night photography. So remember to subscribe, guys, and we'll see you next time with another photography tutorial.